Hey guys, it's me Ellie again. Thank you for watching this video. Today I do want to touch on the dating aspects of Asperger's or autism, whatever you want to call it. And I made a video about this topic 7 years ago, but I want to touch on it in a slightly different light because of what's happened in the past year, or rather even in the last 6 years rather, but especially the last year. So what I really want to touch on is being safe as an individual on the spectrum when dating. And the reason why is because I was in a relationship with now my ex-boyfriend for, if I would say we dated about 5 years, but we known each other for about 6. So I when things first started out, they were very wonderful. I remember there would be times he would buy me the most beautiful red roses you could possibly see just because he was thinking of me. And one time I stayed a night over where he was, I actually woke up to these very expensive flowers that must have cost at least $50 to buy in a store. You know, I woke up to that kind of thing a lot, or I would be surprised with that kind of thing a lot. And then I remember he would do things like here in the American South where you get a dusting of snow and everything shuts down. And then he drove over in his Mustang with the rear wheel drive, those kind of cars that never do good in the snow. He drove that over when there was a few inches of snow on the ground just to hang out. You know, there's a lot of things he would do to swoon me. Like, I remember when we were out in the snow, like, we were dancing a little bit, and then he did this. I was in his arms down here, and then he was up here looking down at me, and it was the cutest thing ever, you know? Like, there's a lot of cute things like that happened. But then the real troubles began when I started to notice some red flags that I overlooked. And being on the spectrum, it can be very difficult to look past those red flags because A, we don't always understand what is expected of people, what the norm is, and we sometimes don't really understand what people's intentions really are, if that makes sense. I always want to think the best of the world, but sometimes the world isn't always the best, and I also sometimes think the very worst of the world. It kind of goes back and forth, and it's very frustrating to say the least. But anyway, so I started to notice some weird things, like he would start throwing small things when he was upset, or when someone randomly sat down next to me at a bar once when he went to the bathroom and they started a conversation with me. I was admittedly kind of drunk, so that made my understanding of what was going on even worse than what it was already with having autism and everything. And I remember he came out of the bathroom and shoved the guy out of his seat and pushed him to the ground. So I suppose that should have been a red flag for me, but the way I saw it, it was just he was just upset that someone was hitting on his girlfriend, and because the guy was watching us from the other side of the room and he knew better, I just dismissed it. Okay, whatever. And then after like five-ish months in, I was actually thinking about breaking up with him. Because I just cannot deal with someone yelling at me and just generally having a temper and everything. And then it happened. Not it breaking up, but it as in I was expecting our now 4-year-old child. So because I was making so little money and then just a bunch of other things, you know, I was like, oh shit, I need a job. I remember just staring at that pregnancy test and just completely just shaking in the bathroom and completely terrified of what he was going to say to me when he found out that I'm pregnant with his kid 6 months into our relationship. Man. It's a mess of a situation, but I mean, I guess everything happens for a reason. But anyway, so I started to notice things escalate even worse after we had moved in. Things were still pretty decent when we were not living together, but I suspect now he was just being on his best behavior. And I started to feel like, as soon as we moved in, like, everything just completely changed. I started to see more of the real side. Like, he would come home very late, he would get very angry, and I feel like when he's drunk, he gets more angry, and starts to throw things at like 4 o'clock in the morning. And I remember a couple weeks before I was to give birth, before I was due, he and I got into an argument over something. He was very upset and was just stressed out about money and things like that. Like, I guess I figured he was going through a lot because baby's coming anytime soon, and, you know, didn't feel like he was ready for it entirely. And I remember he threw a suitcase at the wall. I remember feeling so stressed out from that incident that I started to have the hicks and bracks of false labor starting to kick in, like some pretty bad cramps and everything. And I thought I was starting to go into labor, but thankfully no, not at that point. And then I noticed that as time went on, I had a lot of times where he would be gone and not come home until like 3 in the morning, 4 a.m. Like, I knew he worked nights, but what was strange is that after he had resigned from his other job, a couple months, like not long after we moved into our apartment together, he actually ended up, you know, working at other places, downtown, uptown, stuff like that. He didn't really like to say where he worked. I don't know why. I mean, I guess he told me like a couple places he would work, but like I don't know. There's something weird going on there, and looking back now. And then I worked at a lab for 4.5 years, almost the entire time we were together. I started to notice a lot of red flags, but then because I started to feel complacent in this, if this was going to be it, and this was all anything was ever going to be, I felt like this was it. It ain't gonna get any better than this shit. I remember he would come home very late all the time. And then eventually I started to notice a lot of times where he would come at like 6 in the morning, and even here and there 10 in the morning. And even 2 or 3 times he didn't even come home until the next afternoon, doing God knows what. You know, he would do things like that, and then he would have his friends he was with talk to me, you know, just be like, yeah, hey, this is actually who I'm with, and always had them say hi, just so to prove he wasn't lying, like, yeah, this is who you're with now, but what the hell were you, you know, between when you supposedly got off of work and then? I don't know. And I don't know who else he could have been seeing there. I don't know. I just don't know. I guess having Asperger's made me kind of more naive to those situations instead of, like, completely questioning it. Or maybe it's just something that happens to people in my situation. We just get complacent and we just are glad that, you know what, I get to see my kid. I get to, you know, have a roof over my head and things like that. We just get a little more complacent, I guess, you know? And I faced a lot of self-esteem problems and still have them because I remember being told basically my entire life that I was not worth it. I was never going to really succeed in life. And generally, people never really took me seriously. Like, I remember so many people growing up telling me, you should model, you're so beautiful. But then it's just kind of like, well, what about my other skill sets? Like, I'm not just a pretty face. I mean, I have other talents too. Being pretty is not really a talent, but you know, besides the point there. There's more to people than just looks. Um, but so about a couple of years ago, I was told that he was looking at wedding rings. When I first heard this, I was excited because I finally get to marry the father of my child, and I truly thought that this was the man I was going to end up marrying, but we were waiting until the right time, and there's always a reason for it, but now looking back, they're actually excuses. Like, we don't have money for a wedding. I need to go to school first, and if I'm married when I'm going to school, they're going to count both of our incomes. And if they count both of our incomes, I'm not going to count for financial aid, which was a big reason for me at the time. But looking back, I realized that I actually started to stall when I would actually start going back to school. I always made excuses like, oh, well, you know, I wait until Atlas is back in school, and I want to wait until he's more independent and stuff like that. It sounds legit, right? Kind of. But as time went on and I found this out, I realized this is getting real. He's actually looking at rings. And then at first I thought, you know, let's look at some like Indian saris, you know, have like that little Indian kind of wedding because I've always loved India and I am part Indian. And I've always liked that culture and everything, so I thought it would be kind of cool to think about that kind of thing, and I guess kind of be that little girl for once that actually thought about a wedding, because I used to never really think of that when I was a little girl, but I started to think more about that when I was older, unlike other girls, which is, I don't know what the deal is there, if it's because I have autism, or if I'm just more, or that's just my personality type, or things, or what it is, but yeah, I never really like daydreamed about my wedding or anything when I was a little girl, so it was kind of nice living out a fantasy like that in my older years. Maybe because I actually thought I finally had a chance of actually having a life partner kind of deal, which when I was younger I probably thought, I don't know if a shot in hell ever landed somebody and staying with them. But then I started to think, you know what? Shit, is this really what I want? This was a difficult question because I started to feel complacent. Like, this is as good as life is going to get. Like, I remember a time he took my car without my permission, and now my car has a hideous dent on it that's been there for a couple years, and he has yet to promise to fix it for me. And I look at that, and I just like, ugh, just pisses me off every time I see it. But maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I just need to let it go. I don't know. But anyway, so I started to think on a lot of things, like how he wouldn't come home to me. I barely ever got to see him during the day or at night. Not just because of work schedules, but because he would always go off and do other things. And then, like, you know, the little things like throwing stuff when he's mad or getting angry, even at our child sometimes when he would decide to fall asleep on the couch, which happened about 95% of the time, by the way, which is a problem at looking back now. And he would sleep on the couch, refuse to go in the bedroom where the door and the walls and everything would muffle sounds when when a little child wants to play and everything during the day. And then he would just get angry and keep saying, "You need to be quiet because I'm trying to sleep." Like, go to sleep in the bedroom, dude. Like, how hard is that? He eventually would, but then he would just argue about it instead of just sucking it up and doing it. But yeah, so I was just thinking about all kinds of things about 2-ish years ago. Like, is this what I really want? And as it turns out, after I had been fantasizing for a hot 5 minutes about an Indian sari and, what if I'm going to have flowers and how I'm going to look, how's the wedding going to look, and all the other fun stuff, where's it going to be, and what's it going to cost, stuff like that. I realized, no, this is not the way life is meant to be. And after that, it's just a little bit of an off-topic thing, but I started to see a lot of weird signs from the universe telling me to go in a different direction. Like, I kept seeing a certain someone's name, not his, but someone else's, and, like, all these movies I kept watching, like, their name would randomly pop up. Their name would randomly pop up in all kinds of different places. And given some of the videos I've made, I was like, oh my god, what's up with this? What's up with these weird signs? And I was seeing, like, triple numbers everywhere, certain quadruple numbers sometimes. It was a weird summer 2 years ago, for that. So after that happened, I realized this is not it. This guy, Josh, is not it. Sorry. If you're watching this video, sorry, not sorry. This is how I feel. This is my channel. Most people are not going to know who you are anyway, so don't worry about it so much. Anywho, so I left realizing that the way he was treating me was related to domestic violence, because I was introduced to that term and I realized this is what's going on. And it was just a really weird summer altogether. Like, I went back to my parents' house for a little bit, and then, I couldn't get off the lease, and then eventually, because, like, we didn't go to legal route, we didn't have any plans set for childcare, we didn't have any set plan for me moving out, because he wanted me to pay everything, still, because he wanted a sugar mama, not a girlfriend, not a wife, he wanted a sugar mama, and I happened to have been his chosen target for that. But yeah, so I eventually went back to him after a couple-ish months of being broken up, and I noticed one red flag when I was dropping Atlas off before going to work, because my parents couldn't take him that day for whatever reason. He actually got very aggressive with me when we were broken up and everything, but he got very aggressive with me and insisted on having my phone, and I said no. He kept grabbing around me and everything and trying to get it, and I kept withholding it from him and things like that. And then he eventually got it, wrestled over it, and shouldn't have even happened when it did, but it did. Our son thought we were chasing each other and playing tag or something crazy. No, son, this is not what was going on. And I kept trying to get it from him, and this was before I went to work. And I was like, dude, give me my phone back. And then he found out I was messaging someone, because, like, I developed a crush on him because I kept seeing their name everywhere. I was like, this might be it, right? Universe is giving me signs, like, maybe this means something, I don't know. Which, that's a different topic for that. But he went berserk and started to harass me and say all kinds of things, and was threatening to send him a message saying how crazy I am and all this other nonsense. And looking back now, I realized that people do these things like him because it's a way of control. It's a way of isolation. And unfortunately, people with autism we are already alone as it is, and it's a lot harder for us to bond with people. So when a bond is threatened, it shatters our world more, perhaps more than other people would. And I feel like a lot of people that are victims of domestic violence and such, like I was, they end up in these very lonely situations, and it's so hard for them to escape because they barely have anywhere to go. I know being on the spectrum is even harder to go anywhere because we barely had anything to begin with. So unfortunately we got back together, but then things actually started to get worse. I noticed, for example, like I already felt like our relationship was done when I went back. It Sure, the intimacy was there, but it didn't really feel right to me. And I felt like I only went back because I felt like I had to go back, not because I wanted to. So I started to notice his behavior escalated more and more. He kept stealing my phone, and I had password on, and with face recognition and everything, but apparently what he used to do, and I caught him on a certain incident that happened just about a year ago sharp. Apparently what he did was he took my phone, he took a picture of me on his phone, took it up to my phone, and that's how he got past it. I didn't know how he did it at first. And then I caught him that one time last March. And that's what started the worst incident ever. But I want to say in November, around Thanksgiving, is when he really started to get a lot more angry towards me. Because, like we were living together, but I didn't feel like we were actually together at that point. And I really, really wanted out. I was so miserable. I just couldn't be there anymore. Like, my heart felt cold and felt like my heartstrings were being tugged at and everything. It was not a good situation at all. So I actually, and then Christmas rolled around, and it was just big. I can barely remember what happened on Christmas because I just couldn't even really stand to be around him on Christmas. I just felt like it's a big blur for me right now what happened that Christmas. And then I remember New Year's, kind of. It was a big blur. But one thing I do remember is that we got into an argument over someone I was talking to. The argument got so bad, he pushed me into the bed, and my leg hit the post, and it hurt. I definitely had a bruise on my leg the next day to show for it. I felt very humiliated when he pushed me, and when I got up, he pushed me back on the ground again. And I remember crying, and then, it was not a good night. And I knew that night that 2019 was going to be a shitty year, and it sure as hell was. So, the next few months just dragged and dragged. Time was going really slow. 2019 sucked, by the way, in many ways. I suppose maybe like the first year or so of leaving is the worst. I remember he kept saying we were broken up and not broken up, like, starting around November, December. I had no idea what was going on with the relationship over the next several months after that. And then we celebrated the 5-year anniversary, 10 days after Valentine's Day, but to me, it didn't really, I just felt so done with the relationship at that point. It just felt more like another celebration, routine thing, really. And then things really started to get bad because I told him I wanted to leave, and I was told him with the lease coming to an end in June, and the landlord was going to send us the renewal notice in April. And I had told him I do not intend on renewing with him. I told him that I don't plan on being with you. I don't plan on moving in with you. I plan on turning in my notice to say that I'm not renewing my lease here. The next week, he started to just get more and more angry. I remember our son was asleep on the bed, and we got into an argument early in the morning. This was actually before he went to Florida, with dad's side of the family, his parents. But I remember our son was sleeping on the bed, and we got into an argument, and he was so angry for, I can't remember what the stupid argument was about, but he threw a laundry basket back of my head. Had a bit of a nice headache that day. I'm calling actually right now the video chat with Atlas. Anyways, so they can wait because I'm not. This is more important to me right now than talking to him. So I actually remember just feeling awful that day, headache and everything. And then the day happened. March 12th is the day I left for good. I mean, we're still having problems, but not as bad. So I remember the incident happened. Sure, I misbehaved some that day myself. So when you're in because when you're in a toxic situation, you know, you kind of do things that are out of character, and you do things generally because you're desperate to leave and you're frustrated, and you just know that it's not a healthy situation for anybody to be in. Long story short, yeah, I did misbehave some, but I also remember trying to leave, and he wasn't letting me leave. He was fighting me leaving for over 2 hours, and I got no sleep that night. And eventually, it got to the point for me where I just felt completely terrified that morning. Him not letting me leave, and, you know, we got into an argument about 3 in the morning, and then he stole my phone and started going through it, and I just went crazy, batshit crazy on him, and just getting all angry at him and everything. And then we tried to calm down, and then went to sleep and talked about it in the morning. When our son was in Florida at the time, thank God for that. And he would not let me go back to sleep. He was doing stupid for like 2 hours. He was walking in and out of the bedroom, turning the lights on, turning the bathroom light on, and opening the doors, closing the doors. It was all to provoke me. And eventually, he decided to pour some water on my face when I was trying to go to sleep. And he says I was provoking him, but the reality is that it's like, I'm trying to sleep, and then you're talking about giving me a massage and everything. I was like, just go to sleep, man. And let's not talk about this right now. But kept on going, and then he eventually left the room and did that. And I ran out after him saying, what the... And then, next thing I know, I get a cup thrown at my face, and my nose is bleeding profusely, and I thought I broke it. It was awful. And wanted to leave, and he said, "You're not leaving until you clean your face," and then a whole bunch of other stupid stuff happened. Like, I kept trying to leave and opening the door and shouting out for help, which no one responded to. By the way, if you ever hear someone shouting for help, I don't care if you're scared, call the police. You don't necessarily have to intervene directly, but if you hear something like that and you feel like someone's asking for help, you call for help. I don't know if the neighbors didn't hear, if they're all deaf or they were scared of what the deal was. I don't know how the police were not called. But they weren't. So I ended up trying to leave for like 2 hours. And in between that time, I had been put out of a chokehold at one point, had my hair pulled, was thrown over like you would in wrestling and whatever. And I felt winded as all get out after that one. And then I was shoved into a pile of boxes. And I kept trying to leave, and I remember my legs were just... my legs were on fire, you guys. Oh my god. All that fighting, no sleep, just trying to leave, and it was the worst day of my life, almost. It was definitely one of the top 5. I just felt completely terrified. And it was such a traumatizing thing, and I still don't even remember all the details. But I remember enough to where I knew this wasn't any good. And after that, I realized, this is it. This is my wake-up call. Because if I don't leave now, the only way I'm leaving is when I'm 6 feet under. This is how I felt. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But I remember somehow during that whole incident, he actually threw my car keys. And they were hidden somewhere. I don't know what had happened to them at that point. And he took my phone. He was not letting me have either one of those things back. I couldn't get him back because he hid the car keys, and then the phone, I don't know what the hell he did with it at that point. I had the apartment keys, but he threw the fob off. I wanted to clarify that. So eventually I somehow was able to leave with my laptop and backpack. That was it, though. I didn't have my phone. I didn't have my car key. But I decided to take a picture of my bloody nose and everything with my laptop. And I walked out of that apartment afterwards, and he forgot that my shirt had all kinds of blood on it. And I still have that shirt in that closet too. From that day. I'm never wearing it again, but probably should have worn the color other than pink. Because you could barely see the bloodstains, but yeah. But yeah, I remember I went to the urgent care that was right behind the apartment, and then that's when I got some help. And I remember feeling so horrified and terrified, calling my mother, telling her that something bad happened on the voicemail. And I told her where I was, and I just needed to leave, and I just remember just having a complete meltdown when I got to the urgent care. And I remember walking that whole half mile, whatever it was. I just thought my legs were collapsing, and easily the most terrifying walk of my life. I remember just constantly looking back behind my shoulders, trying to see if he was following my ass in his truck, and it's just the memories, they're just killing me right now. The flashbacks, they're killing me right now. But long story short, apparently if you ever fight back in these kind of cases, it's really hard for them to prosecute you, which is really stupid. But that's just what happened. But yeah, so I've been gone for, I left that apartment. Like, I have a few things here and there that are still over there, but honestly, I could just cut my losses and not feel bad about it, not be upset or anything for the most part. So I feel like with having autism and being involved with domestic violence, I feel like we are so much more prone to becoming victims of domestic violence, not just because of our uncertainties and trying to understand people, but also because, let's just face it, that the perpetrators, whether they're not as bad as some people might think, like where it's only mental, it's only emotional, and it's only here and there, and not necessarily beatings, as people like to think of these kind of situations for some reason. But I can definitely say that the mental and emotional abuse and the gaslighting and everything, that's more damaging than any time being thrown into some boxes or anything is going to do you or me or anything. But yeah, I will definitely say that we are so much more prone to being victims of domestic violence because not only do we want to see the world in a decent way and think that, people want to behave in a way that's logical and makes sense, and they want to they only do bad things to whatever. So, but some people, they just like to screw with other people for a kick. They get a kick out of it. And to me, stuff like that does not make sense. It's like, these people actually exist? These people actually want to hurt other people just to feel in control of their own lives instead of fixing their own lives? Like, to me, that's more logical. Like, if you have such insecurities to where you feel like you need to control someone or whatever, fix yourself before you go, instead of like being this asshole that wants to control someone's finances and whatever. Like, it don't work. That person's only staying with you because you're making it so it's hard for them to leave. I mean, that's just how I think, but I guess not everybody thinks straight. But yeah, so I definitely feel like we are more prone to being victims of domestic violence. And we're also more prone to possibly taking longer to recover in some ways because we just don't understand right off the bat that this ain't right. I mean, maybe that's kind of the point of domestic violence, is that it happens because the people that get involved, like there's a predator and then there's the prey, the victims. Like, these people, they pick on people they feel are vulnerable and they feed off of that. They want to find someone that's giving, that's empathetic, that's kind, and that just generally wants to care about someone. And these assholes, they feed off that energy. They don't care about you. They want your energy. They are psychic vampires. But that's been like my experience with relationships over the past like almost 7-ish years now. And I feel like a lot of what's going on is this forced me to look back at my own relationships, and I realized that I too saw some of these patterns in some of my old relationships. And sometimes I feel like these things happen as a way to remind us and to show us that, what, you kind of need to learn the hard way that, this is not okay. That it's not okay for someone to put you down. It's not okay for someone to throw things at you. It's not okay for someone to throw things that not even at you, it's just at a wall, something small. None of that is okay. And for people like myself, we just were more prone to it because, you know, we want that human connection, and it's a little bit harder for us to come across it because, quite frankly, society and a lot of members in it don't give us a shot. They don't give us a chance to prove ourselves worthy of that love. But it's starting to get a little bit better here. And I hope that what you gain from this video is not necessarily like dating advice or anything, but I feel like I wanted to share this because I feel that there's other people in my situation that are involved with domestic violence. They are on the spectrum and they don't see it. I mean, part of what inspired me to do this is I actually saw a Reddit post of a girl talking about her now ex-boyfriend that she had been dating for 6 years. It was her first relationship, her only friend, and she was talking about being on the spectrum and stuff, and I realized, oh my god, this girl sounds a lot like me, actually. I'm older than she is, and I have a kid and stuff, but she was actually the age I was when I had started seeing my now ex-boyfriend Josh and being in that relationship. And that stood out to me because I was like, you know what? There's other people out there on the spectrum that are in these bad situations, but there's also so few resources out there for adults on the spectrum, like especially when it comes to, you know, job stability, like learning finances, and especially with relationships, because I know a lot of us were told that we ain't got shot. We're never gonna get married. We ain't ever gonna have kids. We ain't gonna have a job. We ain't gonna have a house. We ain't gonna have any of this stuff. Like, there's some psychologists that told friends of mine or their siblings this bullshit. And I'm like, psychologists are saying this, and this is a way to fuel that fire. Like, this is gonna make these people like myself think that we ain't got a shot. And then society kind of feeds that too, because, you know, men are supposed to be socially suave, and then the men on the spectrum, I feel more sorry for you guys than I do us ladies on the spectrum, because us ladies are more forced to be somewhat more socially suave and more in tune with people's feelings and stuff. And then when women are more able to get away with things like asking if a guy is interested or a girl's interested, whatever you're into. And then with men, they're supposed to be the initiators. They're supposed to know these things. And it's just like, for men on the spectrum, that is challenging to do. And I feel for you men on the spectrum. I really freaking do. I mean, I feel for me as a woman on the spectrum. I can a man on the spectrum. God bless you all. But yeah, so how do we stay safe on the spectrum? How do you stay safe when you're dating somebody? I feel like preparation is key, as I have been saying in all my videos. Preparation is such key. Like, you can't be prepared enough. Like, read up on domestic violence. Read up on what's right, what is wrong. How to feel, like, if something feels right or if something feels wrong. What are the red flags? Like, gotta know all the aspects of things. Not just, you know, this is what a relationship looks like. And it's just like, well, what about the red flags? Or, you know, if someone does this, like, how do you react? Like, I feel like preparation is always key, and knowing what to possibly expect and how to possibly react. I feel like that helps a lot. And honestly, I know it's really hard for us people on the spectrum to do this, but trust your feelings. If you feel something ain't right, it's not right. Don't be uncertain just because, you know, you don't feel like you're not understanding what may be going on or whatever. If something doesn't feel right in here, your heart's sinking, you're getting bad feelings in your stomach, it means you need to run. It's hard for us to do, but if something doesn't feel right, you just gotta walk away. I wish I did that. I wish I didn't ignore those red flags, but I did. I mean, I guess everything happens for a reason, but I really wanted to make this video, and thank you for watching this if you watched the whole thing. I feel like I needed to make this video because I want other people to see that there are people on the spectrum that we are dating, by the way, and we are actually experiencing these bad relationships, and you need to stop seeing us as forever children, because damn it, we too have these interests in dating and everything. But yeah, so I do hope that this video helped, and I am glad that I made this video because it helps me to vent a little bit, especially since the 1 year anniversary for the worst incident and the day I finally left was actually March 12th, which was 5 days ago. So I've been thinking a lot about that, and then about my last video that I made on this topic, kind of, and I hope you found it insightful, and thank you for watching this video, and I hope you're safe if you're in a situation, or if you are thinking about leaving. Please do so as soon as possible, but do it safely. If you feel like something is wrong, it's because it probably is wrong. Trust your feelings. Preparation is key. Study up on things. And if you're ever in doubt, ask someone you trust, if you have someone. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Alright, you have a good one. Bye.